Hi, friends. Today we're talking about the faith chapter. We're going to look at what it is, why it's important, where it's found, and what is faith. This is part of Bible Drill Green Cycle. For more information, check out the description below. Hi, friends. I'm Miss Nancy Ruth.
And I'm Mr. Roger.
We want to see kids living for Jesus. So let's get started. First, we have to look at the beginning of Hebrews, which says, what is faith? And we'll explain this a little more at the end. But it says, now faith is the confidence in what we hope for, the assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. And then it goes through and tells the story, briefly touches on the story of a lot of people in the Old Testament, that's the ancients, who's had confidence, had faith in what we hope for, and assurance of what they did not see. This is really cool. Look at this. All right, buckle in. Here we go. First of all, by faith, we know that God created the world because nobody was there to actually take documented evidence of what happened. There were no video cameras. There were no pictures. There were no cell phones to take selfies and things, but God created the world. Then we have Cain and Abel. By faith, Abel offered the very best that he had to God out of worship, and his offering was accepted while his brother's Cain's was not. By faith, Enoch, this is a name, you can look it up there in Genesis. Enoch walked with God, and then he was no more. He didn't die. God just took him up into heaven, and he was no more. That's pretty special. Let's see. Then we have something really important. It says, without faith, it is impossible to please God because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. We have the example of Noah, who God told Noah there was going to be a flood and to build an ark and to put the animals in there and his family. And even though there was no evidence yet that was going to happen, he hadn't seen it yet, he still obeyed God. And as a result, he was blessed. Then we have Abraham, who God told him to leave his family and all that he knew to go to a place that he'd never been to yet, hadn't seen, but he went in faith knowing that God's promises were true. And so did his son and his grandson, Isaac and Jacob. Then it says, Hebrews 11:10, this is talking about Abraham, for he was looking forward to a city without foundations, whose architect and builder was God. He trusted what God was doing and went in faith and trust, believing in what God had promised. Then God promised something amazing. He promised that Abraham and his wife Sarah would have a baby, even though they were old and past childbearing years, and that really happened. Not only that, but God promised Abraham that his offspring, his descendants, his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-great, and however many greats you want to go, would outnumber the stars in the sky. And through this one child that they'd had. It says, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting they were foreigners and strangers on the earth. Are you picking up a pattern? Abraham didn't get to see all those many, many, many descendants, but he believed in God's promise. All right, then, not only that, but God told Abraham to take his one son, his special son of the promise, and to kill him as a sacrifice. And Abraham went about it, and he figured, you know what? God can do anything. He could raise my son from the dead to fulfill his promise. He didn't know how this was going to work, but he knew it would. And God stopped him and provided a ram as a sacrifice instead. But Abraham trusted God would still keep his promise even when it didn't make sense. Then his son Isaac blessed his two sons, Jacob and Esau. Even though he wouldn't get to see their future, he blessed them and had faith that God would do what he'd asked for his sons in their futures. Also, his son Jacob had 12 sons, and he also blessed his sons with what God told him would be in each of those men's life. That was really special. One of those sons was Joseph, and Joseph spent most of his life in Egypt away from his homeland. But when he died or was close to death, he was going to die soon. He said, I know that God is going to bring his people, bring our family back to Israel. And so after I die, I want you to take my bones. And the Egyptians were good at mummification. So they mummified Joseph. And he said, I want you to take my bones with you when you go back to the land where I grew up, the land of my fathers. Take my bones with you because I know God is going to keep his promise to bring us back there. He didn't get to see it, but he knew it was coming. Then Moses, when Moses was born, the Pharaoh was killing a bunch of baby boys in the Hebrew camp. And his parents, Moses' parents, knew that God had something special planned for this baby. So they hid him and then put him in a basket. And he was found by Pharaoh's daughter and raised as a member of Pharaoh's own family. So he was educated. He had all this privilege and all these great things. And here's something really interesting. You ready? It says he chose to be mistreated along with the people of God who were slaves in Egypt, rather than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. Moses regarded disgrace for the sake of Christ as of greater value than the treasures of Egypt, because he was looking ahead to his reward. See, Jesus hadn't been named yet. They didn't know it was going to be Jesus Christ, but Christ was the Messiah, the Savior that was promised from all the way back in Genesis, back in the garden with Adam and Eve. These people knew God keeps his promises, and it included the promise of Jesus and the promise to free his people, not just from slavery in Egypt, but from slavery to sin. They knew God keeps his promises. As part of that, there were plagues that were happening in Egypt, and God warned Moses the last plague was going to kill the firstborn in all the households. And so God told Moses what people should do to show that they have faith that God will keep them safe, and God keeps his promises and will do what he says. And that was the Passover. And they kept the Passover as an act of faith, and God honored their faith, and the people in those households, no one died. Okay, then when they left Egypt, they were in face of the Red Sea. You remember this story where God used Moses to part the Red Sea when the Israelites left Egypt. And the people walked in faith on dry land through there. But when the Egyptians tried to follow, the waters came back in and they drowned. Then, by faith, God gave Joshua a weird military strategy when it came to Jericho. He said, I want you to march around the city for 7 days, and then God will make the walls fall down. That sounds really strange. But Joshua and the people of Israel believed what God said he would do and did it, and got to see what God had promised. As part of that, before that even happened, there was a woman that lived in Jericho named Rahab, and some spies came to scout out the land. Some Hebrew spies went to scout out the land, and Rahab knew this is the true God. And so when the spies came, she hid them and didn't turn them over to be killed. She hid them. And as a result, she got to live when the city was destroyed, because she believed in God and trusted that he would do what he said he would do. Then the writer of Hebrews goes on and starts rattling off things really fast. Okay, I'm going to make this picture a little bigger so you can see what these references are. He says, remember about Gideon. Gideon was a prophet and a military leader, and Barak and Samson and Jephthah and David and Samuel and the prophets. There are so many prophets, I couldn't even fit them on this slide. Okay. And some we probably don't even know about their names. Okay. So we had the prophets. Then he goes on and says, lost my place. Hold on. There we go. So these people who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised. There we go. They shut the mouths of lions like Daniel in the lion's den. They quenched the fiery furnace. Do you remember Daniel's friends in the fiery furnace? How God kept them safe in the furnace? Then there were people that escaped the sword and were persecuted and all kinds of things. There were some times where children were raised back to life again and given back to their mothers. All of these things happened because of faith. Okay, and here's how it ends up. It says the world was not worthy of these people, the men and women and everyone involved in this list, and even those they couldn't name. It says I couldn't name everybody. These were all commended for their faith, yet not one of them received everything that had been promised. Now, this is where it ties into us, because we have received Jesus. Jesus came and he died on the cross. He's the Savior, the Messiah. He took our punishment for sin and he came back to life again so that those who believe in him will live forever with God, beginning now and going through eternity. But we haven't seen eternity yet. We're still in the midst of that, haven't seen it all the way yet. This is the point of the book of Hebrews. All right, so listen how this works, because that's the question I have. When I'm looking at this, how were these people able to have this kind of faith and this kind of trust in God that he would do what he promised? Here's the key. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, those in Hebrews 11 and the others we know that fit this description, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us. Things like fear, things like worry, things like anxiety, things like saying that we are no good because that's not what God says. And possibly habits like addictions and things that are holding us back. So we need to throw all those things off and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us. Here is how. You ready? Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. And he's an example too, because for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. See, the key is not about what all these people did and the great things that happen in their lives and their great faith. That's not the point of this chapter. The point of this chapter is the God who promised and was faithful in every single one of these instances. See, these people didn't have something special about them that you and I don't have. What they had was a clear view of who God is and the greatness of God and the fact that he still works miraculously even today. In their day and even today, the clear view of God is what was allowing these people to have the faith to step out and do these crazy things because they knew God is faithful. That is the point of this chapter. They could go out and do these because they trusted that God would keep his promises. All right, so let's look at where this is found so that you can go back and read this anytime you're feeling discouraged. All right, this is in the faith chapter is in Hebrews. All right, one of the churches I was at had a coffee shop, and that coffee shop was called Hebrews, like you brew coffee, Hebrews. And I thought that was really funny because it's also a book in the Bible, Hebrews. And so that's what the coffee cup is, Hebrews. And then remember who's number one? God. And it's worth saying it twice. Who's number one? Who's number one? So it's in Hebrews 11. So the faith chapter is found in Hebrews 11. Here's how you find the book of Hebrews. Philemon, Hebrews, James. Hebrews is that bookmarked book between Paul's letters and the general letters. Hebrews had a race to the end of the Bible. First came James, and then Peter on his two-wheeled bicycle. Then came John on his three-wheeled tricycle. Jude slipped right in there before Revelation declared, the end.
These are the general letters or general epistles, and Revelation is the book of New Testament prophecy.
So to find the book of Hebrews, past Paul's letters, remember it's that bookmark book, you're going to go past Paul's letters till you get to Hebrews. Okay, then you're going to look for the big 11. Mine's at the very bottom of the page. All right, that's how you find the book of Hebrews. So the faith chapter is Hebrews chapter 11. And you can go back and read it yourself. And remember that tie-in to chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. That tells us how we can have that faith, that step out and trust and hold on kind of faith. To learn more about what that faith looks like and how that works, check out this video. You also might like the videos in one of these playlists from the Bible Drill Green Cycle. I love you, friends. I'll see you next time.